Jayavada Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayavada Madhava Kunja Bihari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you. All right, continuing reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions, text 41. Sattvam rajas tama iti tisra saranri narakaha tatrapi kaikasho rajan pidhyante gatayastrita idai kaikataro nyabhyam svabhava upahanyate sattvam rajastama iti tisra saranri narakaha tatrapi kaikasho rajan pidhyante gatayastrita yudhayai kataro nyabhyam svabhava upahanyate sattvam rajastama iti tisra saranri narakaha tatapi ekaikasho rajan vidyante gatayastridha yudaikai kataro nyabhyam svabhava upahanyate.
Sattvam rajastama iti tisra suranri naraka tapyekaikasho rajan vidyante gatayastrida Daikai kakataro nyabhyam svabhava upahanyate
Svatvam rajastama iti tisra surandri narakaha tatrapyekaikasho rajan vidyante gatayaschudha yadaikai kataro nyabhyam svabhava upahanyate.
Sattvam rajastama iti tisra suranri narakaha Tatrapyekaikashorajan Vidyante Gatayastrida Yadaikaikataro Nyabhyam Svabhava Upahanyate.
Sattvam rajastama iti
Stama iti
tisra sura nirnarakaha
Srasaranrinaraka
tatrapyekai kashorajan
Tapyekai
vidyante gatayastrida yadaikai katarobhyabhyam swabhava upahanyate.
Swabhava upahanyate.
Sattvam rajastama iti
Sattvam rajastama iti
tisra suranunarakaha tatrapyekaikashorajan vidyante gatayastudha yadaikaikataronyabhyam svabhava upahanyate.
Sattvam rajastama iti
Stama iti
tisra sura narakava
Tisra saranrinarakaha
tatrapi ikaso rajan
Tatrapi kaikashorajan
vidyante gatiyastrada
Vidyante gatayastrudha
yadai katoro nabyam
Yadaikai kataronabhyam
svabhava upahanate.
Swabhava upahanyate.
Sattvam rajastamaiti
Sattvam rajastamayati
tisra suranrinaraka
Tisra saranrinarakaha
tatrapi ekaikoso raja
Tatrapi kaikashorajan
vidyate
Pityate gatayastrita
yadaikakatoranyabhyam
Yadaikai kataronyabhyam
svabhava upahanyate.
Swabhava upahanyate.
Sattvam rajastamaiti
Shastamaiti
tasra suranirnarakaha
Shastramrita
tatrapyekaikashorajan vidyante gatayastrida yadaikaikataronyabhyam svabhava upahanyate.
Bhava Upayanyate
Sattvam rajastamaiti
Shastamaiti
tisra suranirnarakaha tatrapyekaikashorajan vidyante gatayastrida
Ente
yadaikai kataronyabhyam
Aikai Katarona
swabhava upahanyate.
Sattvam, the mode of goodness. Rajaha, the mode of passion. Tamaha, the mode of darkness. Iti, thus. Tisraha, the three. Sura, demigod. Nri, human being. Narakaha, one who is suffering hellish conditions. Tatra api, even there. Ekai kashaha, another. Rajan, O king. Pidyante, divide into. Gatayaha, movements. Tridha, three. Yada, at that time. Ekai kataha, one in relation with another, anyapyam, from the other, swabhava, habit, upahanyate, develops. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. According to the different modes of material nature, the modes of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, there are different living creatures who are known as demigods, human beings, and hellish living entities. O king, even a particular mode of nature being mixed with the other two is divided into three, and thus each kind of living creature is influenced by the other modes and acquires its habits also. Purport. The living entities individually are being conducted by a particular mode of nature, but at the same time there is every chance of their being influenced by the other two. Generally, all conditioned souls in the material engagement are influenced by the mode of passion, because every one of them is trying to lord it over the material nature to fulfill his individual desire. But in spite of the individual mode of passion, there is always the chance of being influenced by the other modes of nature by association. If one is in good association, he can develop the mode of goodness, and if in bad association, he may develop the mode of darkness or ignorance. Nothing is stereotyped. One can change his habit by good or bad association, and one has to become intelligent enough to discriminate between good and bad. The best association is the service of the devotees of the Lord, and by that association one can become the highest qualified man by the grace of the Lord's pure devotees. As we have already seen in the life of Srila Narada Muni, he became the topmost devotee of the Lord simply by the association of pure devotees of the Lord. By birth he was the son of a maidservant and had no knowledge of his father and no academic education, even of the lowest status, but simply by associating with the devotees and by eating the remnants of their foodstuffs, he gradually developed the transcendental qualities of the devotees. By such association, his taste for chanting and hearing the transcendental glories of the Lord became prominent, and because the glories of the Lord are non-different from the Lord, he got direct association with the Lord by means of sound representation. Similarly, there is the life of Ujamil in the 6th canto, who was the son of a Brahmana and was educated and trained properly in the discharge of the duties of a Brahmana, but who, in spite of all this, because he contacted the bad association of a prostitute, was put into the path of the lowest quality of Chandala, or the last position for a human being. Therefore, the Bhagavatam always recommends the association of the Mahat, or the great soul, for opening the gate of salvation. To associate with persons engaged in lording it over the material world means to enter into the darkest region of hell. One should try to raise himself by the association of the great soul. That is the way of the perfection of life. Translation again. According to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, there are different living creatures who are known as demigods, human beings, and hellish living entities. O king, even a particular mode of nature being mixed with the other two is divided into three, and thus each kind of living creature is influenced by the other modes and acquires its habits also. Maharaj, we'd love to hear your comments if you'd be willing to share.
There was a topic brought up recently about this, wasn't it? Someone was discussing about whether the one is... So, remember that? A few days ago? Could someone refresh? I wasn't able to hear that exactly, but if we could speak on that question in light of this answer, which says that everyone is in, all the humans in the material world, especially the middle planetary systems, are influenced primarily by the mode of passion, because they all want to enjoy their senses. They all have an individual. So the individual taste is affected by association. So as one associates with particular modes of material nature, then he develops the habit. Svabhava, the word is used here. Svabhava means his habit. He's now, this is his way of doing things now. It's like if you associate with people that are drinking, then they have a particular habit. They have a particular way of doing things. What do they do in their evenings? They go and drink. And they have other things that they do. So, and this can be is influenced by one's association. If one gets good association, then he can very easily become a very good person. One quick example, I was visiting our temple, one temple in India that was formerly a, what do you call it, for those orphanage, yes, orphanage. And there was a stipulation they could use the temple, but they had to keep the orphanage going and the family, so the person who gave the temple informed them. So they did, they kept the orphanage going. And I was visiting there once and I asked, does the orphanage still go? Do you still do that? He said, yes. And I said, can I see some of the orphans? He said, yes. So he called and several brahmacharis came out, beautiful, shining brahmacharis with all the good qualities, all the tilak, and they paid their dandavats. I said, these are the orphans? Yes, these are orphans. But by association, from the beginning of their life, they associated with the devotees. So they very easily became devotees. That's why Prabhupada often said, if you get a chance to take your birth in a family of devotees, it's extremely fortunate, because your chances of becoming a devotee are very strong. If you're in that association, if you don't get mixed with improper association. Improper association will have an effect on anyone. And the only person it may not affect would be a completely pure devotee who's simply not interested in anything material. And there are those, like Haridas Thakur and others, who passed amazing tests of being in association with materialistic persons without being influenced even slightly. Rather, their influence was so strong that the other party, which was full of ignorance and passion, became elevated and purified. Like the sun. The sun is so pure that even if the sun comes in contact with as it does when the sun rays comes down, some filthy place where urine and stool are paths of garbage, we might think that the sun is going to get affected by it. The sun doesn't get affected. It's so strong, but it affects everything else and purifies it. Now, if the sun can do that, imagine how much Krishna can do that. He's the source of all purity. And Krishna's devotees. And even if one doesn't associate with Krishna's devotees, if he associates with people in the mode of goodness, then he can become influenced by that mode of goodness. He will be. And he will be interested in things like doing good things, trying to understand nature and understanding God. It's like we see there are God-fearing people, God-appreciating people. And so that kind of association is good. That's why they're always so concerned, parents are concerned where they live, because what they live determines what school district they're in. What school district you're in is determined by, then there's certain types of persons that that live in certain types of school districts, and then they're concerned that their children get the right, what they consider the right type of association. Because they know that if their children are raised up with people that are coming from a different swabhava, different habits, then they'll be affected by that. So association does matter. And everyone gets there. I remember something about karma that was being discussed. You remember this discussion? No. Karma is, yes, that's what allows a person, a living entity, to move in the material world. He's free to move, but he gets his karma based on his past activities and his desires. Then in that situation, he creates a new set of future. So destiny is, man makes his own destiny. And so he's destined, certain things will happen to him based on his past. Just like if a person has committed some vicious acts, and when he's caught, he's apprehended and he's sentenced to stay so many years in prison, let's say. So now he's destined to do that. He has to do that. But how he handles that is in his own choice. Some, when they go to prison, they become even more affected by the modes of ignorance and passion, because they're associating with so many other prisoners, and they become even more degraded. But there are those who use that time for getting into something better, something higher. And they come out of prison and they're in better condition than they were, so they somewhat rectified. And similarly, if they associate with devotees, then when they come out, even while they're in the prison, they can become pure devotees. One can be a pure devotee in any circumstance. Thank you.
Jai, thank you, Maharaj. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So one sentence here really stuck out to me. It's very nice. Prabhupada, well, it's two sentences, but Prabhupada said, nothing is stereotyped. One can change his habit by good or bad association, and one has to become intelligent enough to discriminate between good and bad. So, in the translation, we heard there's different distinctions of different living creatures, which is, shared in accordance with the modes of material nature. So, how does one know what is good and bad? Like Maharaj said, some people are sending their kids to school because they want their kids to have, a favorable environment, a favorable association. But how do we know what's absolutely good and bad compared to the relative good and bad? Because one person thinks this thing is great, the other person thinks, oh, that's not good, I would never send my kids there, that's ridiculous. Another person thinks, oh, this is the best thing ever, and another person thinks it's not so great. So it's always relative. So to discriminate between what's good and bad, we need something beyond our limited knowledge of this relative knowledge. So we need to turn to the scripture. The scripture is what gives us a clear view of what is actually good and bad. And this is actually what separates these demigods, or the suras and the asuras, or the demons. The demonic personalities have no faith in the scriptures. And the demigods are devotees, and they have faith in the Vedas and the scriptures. So the modes of material nature is a very prevalent aspect of the philosophy to understand. And it's very nice because it's very practical. The more that we understand it, the more that we could see this is really what's going on around us. And to go back to the sentence that Prabhupada mentioned, he says, nothing is stereotyped. One can change his bad habit by good or bad association. So nothing's stereotyped, nothing's just set out in this way or that way, or this person's like this or like that, but merely by our association. We're contacting different vibrations, you could say, that are feeding on to us, and we're inhibiting that and carrying that on in our life. Like I was speaking yesterday, we're doing one activity, it creates a reaction, it affects us in a certain way, so then we do another activity, and because we were affected previously in another way, that shapes our consciousness to act in this way, and then we're just constantly acting and acting and acting, being stuck in this network of karma and reaction. And I was just thinking about it, it's like, imagine you go into like a very dark room, and you're trying to, find your phone or something that's, over there on the shelf, but, you can't even get across the room. You're like stumbling around, you like find something else, you pick this up. This is kind of what we're doing in the material world. It's without knowledge of the scripture, we don't know what's good or bad, so we're just stumbling around like, oh, this is good, this is nice, this is, and then it fries us out. It becomes a little too much, and we're like, no, that's not good. That's actually not what I'm looking for, But if we could turn on the light switch, then immediately we could see, what's what. We could see what's clear. So this is why the scripture is needed, and most of us don't so aptly just take readily and quickly to the scripture. So this is the role of the guru, who provides the knowledge of the scripture and disseminates it in a way so we can understand. It's like this prayer that we say before class, Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Anmilitam Yana Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. That the guru opens my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Otherwise I was born in ignorance. And who's not born in ignorance? We're like crying and fearful, and like we have no clue what's going on. And like I mentioned yesterday, we're raised in a whole way to think. It's madness that the average person's not so inclined to take instruction from somebody on something that's so important, such as spiritual life. If our car breaks down, or my computer breaks, or the screen in my phone breaks, very quickly I take it to somebody who knows what they're doing, and then they fix it. I have no problem. But when it comes to, how do I actually live my life? How do I control my mind? How do I, understand the deeper meanings? I'll figure it out. I'll find the right YouTube video. I'll figure it out. I'll do this proper meditation. It will all work out. It's not without good cause, because it's the age of Kali, so there's many cheaters. So for something so gross, it's easy to see it's broken, it could be fixed. It's broken, it could be fixed, so let me take it to the right person. But as far as my life, this is my life. I can't ask somebody how to live my life. But as I already established, the point is, what is our life? Our life is, we're born into a certain environment, and we're not able to actually act independently of that. We're trained to think in a certain way, to act in a certain way, and then we go through life and suffering the reactions of our karma, creating more karma. So what is my life? It's just our association with the modes of material nature that's just spiraling on and on and on and on until we come in contact with the devotees. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says something that's connected to this. He says, Shariram yadavapnoti yachchapyu utkramatishvaraha grahitvatani samyati vaigurganthan ivashayat. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So our subtle body is just carrying us from one body to the next body. our mind, our intelligence, the subtle aspects is carrying us to our next gross body. As Krishna says, just like the wind is carrying the aroma. So, this is why it's so important to choose wise association. And as Prabhupada pointed out, the best association is of the pure devotees. The Srimad Bhagavatam is so nice because it presents Krishna consciousness in a complete scientific way, a systematic way, a detailed process. In the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, many different sages are gathering to inquire from Sutta Goswami. They're having a big yagya to understand what life is all about, essentially. So they ask 6 questions, and then in the second chapter, Sutta Goswami, he begins answering these questions, and there's a few texts from like text 4 all the way to 21. It pretty much describes the whole process of Krishna consciousness, of how one can hear about the Lord, develop faith in the Lord, apply service, apply himself to the process of devotional service, and become free from the modes of material nature, which is being discussed here. And one is free from the modes of material nature, one neither hankers nor laments, he becomes happy within himself. From being happy within oneself, one is satisfied, and then one can naturally engage in spiritual activities. And this is what we're all looking for, is to be, happy and satisfied, rather than constantly searching externally for this satisfaction, which is just leaving us on a perpetual chase, which Krishna says is just like pouring oil on a fire. You keep trying to put the fire out with oil or ghee, but it keeps... Let me throw more at it. This is what we're doing. We're chasing happiness, but it's always eluding us. And this is born of the mode of passion, which Krishna says is the nature of the mode of passion is unlimited desires, or always longing. But in that second chapter, where Sutta Goswami is answering these sages, he gives a shortcut, you could say. What does he say? He says, Shushusho Shodadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsevaya Viprapunya Tirtha Nishevana. He says, by rendering service to the pure devotees, then attraction for Krishna Katha, Vasudeva Katha Ruchihi, then this develops. And then Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantasto Hyavajani Vidinoti Saritsatam. By developing attraction, affinity to hearing the message of Krishna, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, naturally Krishna enters the heart and purifies the heart from within. So by rendering service to those who have a taste for devotional service and a taste for hearing Krishna Katha, then we also develop a taste for hearing. When we truly develop a taste and are eager to hear, then Krishna purifies the heart from within. Nashta Paresh Avajeshu Nitim Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. By constant hearing and rendering devotional service to these devotees, and rendering devotional service by lending our ear and intelligence to the scriptures, then Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki, one becomes fixed up in devotional service. And when one becomes fixed up in the path of devotional service, then Tadava Justamo Bhava Kama Lobhatayasche Cheta Eteranavitam Stitvam Sate Prasidati. Tadava Justamo Bhava, he overcomes the modes, the lower modes of material nature, which is being talked about here and Prabhupada is highlighting. And then Stitvam Sate Prasidati, he becomes fixed in the mode of goodness, in sattvic state. When one is fixed up in the sattvic state, then he becomes enlivened. Evam Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sagya Sajayate. When one becomes fixed up in this state above the lower modes of material nature and is rendering service to the Lord, Evam Prasanna Manaso, his mind becomes enlivened. Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga, Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam in Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata. He's applying devotional service, and he actually directly realizes that it's factual. He realizes the presence of the Lord. By realizing the presence of the Lord, mukta sangasa jayate, he becomes a liberated person from the effects of karma, from the material world. And by doing this, Vidyate hiriraya grantis chidyante sarvasamshaya kshiyante chasya karmani drishta evatmanishvare. He becomes free. He cuts himself from the karma granti, this knot within the heart that's always affecting us, that's always pulling us this way and that way. Like Krishna's saying, our subtle body is just carrying us from one body to the next, to the next. Then he cuts this, he slashes it all down, and drishta evat manishrare, he becomes a Goswami, more or less. He becomes in control of his senses. He knows what's right, he knows what's wrong, he knows how to act. He's not swayed by the material things around him. He becomes fixed. So this is what we're trying to do, is partake in this process, and we have to practice to overcome these lower modes of material nature. My Guru Maharaj would say that the mode of goodness is like, has anybody ever been to the circus and you see people walking on the high wire? They're walking on the, what do they call it, trapeze? Tightrope. What's a trapeze? Is that it? Oh, okay, the tightrope, not that. So you're walking on the tightrope, and they carry this little stick, for balance. And what do they have under this thing? A net. Exactly. So the way he explains it is, by practicing Krishna consciousness, the aim is not sattva gun, not the mode of goodness, but the aim is Vishuddha sattva, this transcendental state, above the modes of material nature. But because we're conditioned beings, we have the tendency to fall down, back to our old conditioning. So we keep this net underneath the tightrope. The net represents the mode of goodness. So we cultivate the mode of goodness in our habits, our etiquette, our behaviors, so that when I do fall down from my sadhana, from whatever place I'm at, then I don't fall so far. So then when you don't fall so far, it's easy to pick yourself back up. But, if I fall down so far every time, it's like, I tried chanting Hare Krishna, and, I gave up, I went back to drinking and smoking, then it becomes so hard to overcome these things. So this is the importance of the mode of goodness, so that it is a nice platform for us to launch into the transcendental state. And from the transcendental state, then one becomes propelled by a much higher force. Rather than trying to run and escape the material world behind us, you're actually running towards Krishna, trying to please Krishna. And by you pleasing Krishna, Krishna becomes more pleased, and then you become more blissed out, and you want to give more to Krishna, and Krishna gives you more, and then it becomes this infinite rasa, this infinite exchange of love and reciprocation according to the inclination that one particular devotee has towards the Lord. But because we don't have that, because our innate attraction is covered by these modes of material nature, then we have to practice the process of sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means, practice, rules, regulations. So we wake up at a certain time, we come to the temple at a certain time, we train a certain number of rounds, and try to regulate all of our activities so we can make progress constantly. Otherwise, like Valmiki, he was saying last week, he made a very good point. Like, how many of us wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off, 3:30, 4, whatever time. Jai, it's time to go see Gaura Nitai. I go jump in the shower and all right, I'm just chanting the whole time, Hari Bol, I'm ready for this. How much of this is oh, I gotta get up. And then, you have to search your mind of the reason why you want to get that one reason What actually gets you up? Oh, I have to do this. Oh, everybody's going to know that I'm not there. Oh, I've been going so many times, I can't slip up now. We all have something there that gets us up. And it's an interesting thing to observe because everybody has this in this world, but we might not be so aware of it. What gets us up in the morning, or what drives us, what propels us. And that's a good sign of how we're affected by the modes of material nature. If I have no inclination to get up and I just want to sleep, I want to be lazy, I don't really want to deal with life, or if I do, my desires to fulfill my habits of drug addiction or something like that, this is a very, very low state. But if my drive to get up is like, yeah, I got to go to work, I got to get money, I got to do this, I got to get that, it's passionate state. But to really force ourselves to overcome the influences of these modes and overcome the flickering nature of the mind, this is cultivating sattva gun, which Prabhupada makes the point over and over again, is that we can't just switch from wherever we're at to this place. This is what he's saying. Nothing is stereotyped. One can change his habit by bad or good association. So we're just changing the way we associate with things, and then naturally we'll imbibe those qualities. But because we're not so favorable to sattva gun, then there might be some kickbacks at first. Krishna says that, when cultivating sattva gun, it tastes like poison in the beginning. It tastes like nectar in the end. And the mode of passion, it tastes like nectar in the beginning and it tastes like passion in the end. And this isn't even a spiritual thing at all. You could see like people who are, say somebody's really obese, really overweight, really heavy. They let their life go in that way. And then they decide to change their self around by starting exercise and working out, and cultivating better habits. And then they shed all the weight. And, it takes so many days of hard work and tears, and, nobody's really there for them. Like, this is cultivating more of a sattvic lifestyle. So at first, it's fun to just eat and be lazy and not deal with it, but then it puts them in such a hellish situation. But then they have to go through the hard work where it tastes like poison, But then you put in the work and you keep doing the work and you keep doing the work and you see the results. And then from the results, it becomes much favorable for, healthy lifestyle. Now that's a strict material example. But the point is that the modes of material nature are, in fact, material. But like I mentioned, the safety net, we're cultivating them to help us come to the spiritual platform. So I'll end here. If anybody has any comments or questions, we could talk. If not, I'd like to talk about Advaita Acharya, since there's no breakfast. Yes, Radhastali Mataji. Can we get a microphone?
Hare Krishna. I was reminded of something that my Gurudev likes to say. He says that when our sadhana is going well and everything seems good, we can write these things down and prepare ourselves for when we fall. And so then when we do fall, we can go back and read that and realize, okay, I was able to be here one time, so I can try again. It's kind of a nice encouragement. I like Kadamba Kanana Maharaj's example of like the tightrope and like the mode of goodness being a net underneath us to not let us fall so far. Because I find myself, it's just so constantly like up and down and so I really appreciate you emphasizing like Srila Prabhupada's points on how nothing is stereotyped and like we can change our habits. Like, it's just very encouraging that Srila Prabhupada was saying this because he knows how hard it is, especially in this age of Kali, for us to stay steady. At least myself, I'll speak for myself because I'm not very steady right now. But thank you for emphasizing such nice points today. Hare Krishna.
Jai. You had something?
I was wondering why are bad association and the lower modes of nature attractive to us living entities?
Well, Prabhupada says it here at the end. He said, I don't know exactly where he said it, but essentially the desire to lord over the material nature. Because we're trying to play God, we're trying to control the environment around us, so we're trying to control and manipulate things for our enjoyment. You know, like a person who's sattvic, they're not trying to go control the world and get this and get that. They're more so just living life, and they're peaceful and reacting to it. But when we're passionate, we're trying to run and chase and get this and get that and get this, you know, that's going to make me happy. I'm trying to control everything. And when we're in tamagun, it's like, it's miserable and we're just trying to avoid it. So we're trying to, you know, get intoxicated or sleep or something to ignore it. So, but it's conditioning, you know, so it's actually not attractive to a living entity. But it's only because we've fallen and we've associated with these modes of material nature, they've influenced us, that we find them attractive. This is the only reason why. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you speak on the difference between like inaction in ignorance and inaction in the mode of goodness? Yeah.
Inaction?
Well, like you were saying just now, that someone in the mode of goodness, they're not trying to, you know, go around and control everything around them and hanker for this or that. So like someone in the mode of ignorance, they might also be seemingly like acting in the same way by just being like numbing themselves. And so like, can you speak a little bit on the difference?
So it said that mode of passion, in terms of the universal creation, it's like passion is required for the creative energy. Sattva gun, or goodness, is required for maintenance, and tamagun is required for destruction. So, if you put it in this light, yeah, tamagun, I'm bewildered by life, you know, I'm in anxiety, I'm depressed, I don't want to deal with people, I don't want to deal with my job, I don't want to deal with, you know, my homework, or whatever it is, it stresses us out, so then we resort to doing certain activities to take our mind off of it, to find a distraction, which most often is taking intoxication, or, you know, sleeping, oversleeping, or just zoning out and watching movies, TV, video games. So like there's a whole generation of kids growing up, they're just like sit and play on their phones and play video games. So yeah, they're doing an activity in one sense because the soul is always active, but you know, physically, you know, they're not doing something active and productive. They're just zoned out into this thing, you know, where somebody who's passionate is very, very active, and passionate nature is, you know, really tied into wanting the fruits or the results. Whereas sattva gun, person can be very active also, but they're not so attached to the fruits or the results. They realize, okay, I'm not in control, there's something higher than me, and, you know, all these things aren't going to bring me happiness. You know, happiness is here. And, I mean, you could see this with different cultures. I mean, I notice people from India, you know, are naturally more inclined to be more sattvic. They're more composed and calm, whereas like Americans are like all over the place. We're like thinking about this, thinking about that, we got to get this. It comes from the culture that we've been raised in. But, you know, the Kali Yuga is influencing us in detrimental ways. But like Prabhu was telling me yesterday, like when he was a kid, he remembers his mom like reading him lullabies of Krishna. Like we didn't have that here. We're being read lullabies of things that fuel more passion and fuel more ignorance. So yeah, somebody who's sattvic, I mean, you could think of in another context where yogis, they might try to cultivate sattva guna and they go just try to meditate and control their senses or do pranayam, do yoga, like asanas. Yeah, these things aren't inherently spiritual, but they help cultivate sattva guna, and that's why one does them, is to cultivate sattva guna so they could think more easily about spiritual topics. So, yeah, there's a gulf of difference, actually. You could talk endlessly about this. But I would like to say a few words about Advaita Acharya. I know it's late, but we don't have breakfast, so maybe everybody could bear with me for a few minutes. So, every day we sing Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita. Shri Advaita. So Advaita Acharya is an incarnation of the Lord. He's an avatar of Mahavishnu. He comes into he comes into this world because the Lord, whenever he descends, he brings with him his whole entourage. He brings his whole dham with him. Wherever Krishna goes, he brings the spiritual world with him. And we could see that in this material world, like a very famous musician or, the president or somebody like this goes somewhere. They bring their own security team, their own planes, their own this, their own that. So Krishna is non-different. Whenever he comes, he brings all of his associates, everything with him. But they just take different forms according to the different leela. I would say different time, place, and circumstance, but the spiritual world is above time, place, and circumstance, so it's all a leela, which means pastime. Meaning that the Lord descends and brings these things according to his desire of how it will be arranged. So, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. Krishna descended as Lord Chaitanya in this age of Kali Yuga to deliver the fallen souls, namely by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In Advaita Acharya is very significant in his Leela. Lord Chaitanya would often describe Advaita Acharya as being the reason of his descent. So Advaita Acharya is a manifestation of God, and he was taking to worship of God for God to come down. He was sitting on the banks of the Ganga and he was worshipping a Shalagram Shila, which is it's the form of Krishna in a stone. And in India, it's very common for brahmanas, like higher class saintly people, to worship these stones. They might worship it by themselves, or they might put it on the altar, like with their deities. We used to have a few that were here a few years ago, but the person taking care of them left, so sadly they left also. But so Advaita Acharya was sitting on the bank of the Ganga doing his bhajan, and he's worshipping the Shalagram Shila, and he's praying for the Lord to descend. Because the age of Kali was being felt in this place where they were living, of Navadvip, the Navadvip greater area. There was only very few devotees, and Advaita Acharya felt strong compassion for those who weren't devotees. I was hearing this yesterday in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, the way that he was feeling compassionate, and it was very inspiring that, we should feel the same way, that, imagine we don't have Krishna consciousness, we don't have this knowledge, we're just being whoosh, whoosh, thrown by these modes of material nature, where, worshipping this, worshipping that. In India, they worship this God, worship that God, nobody has a clue of what's actually going on. It's like, I have a big test coming up, and I'm afraid that I might fail. Okay, let me worship Lord Shiva, let me worship Ganesh, let me worship Kali, let me cast a wide net to make sure, that I'm going to worship somewhere, that somebody will help me. But no, we hear that Krishna is the Supreme Person, and by understanding the scriptures as it's given by our acharyas, it becomes very clear. So Advaita Acharya wanted Krishna to descend to revamp this Krishna consciousness in this Kali Yuga. So he was worshipping Lord Chaitanya, and then Lord Chaitanya did in fact descend. So at the time when he was partaking in his lila, his pastimes of being a little baby and a child, Advaita Acharya was much older. Much older. And he would host at his house Sangha, like association of devotees, chanting the glories of Krishna, speaking of Krishna Katha. And Lord Chaitanya's older brother actually ended up going there, and Lord Chaitanya would run there, often as a little kid, and they would be so awestruck by the presence of little Nimai, and they wouldn't even be able to know why. They were just like, something special about this boy. They were like sitting there staring at him. But Lord Chaitanya's older brother, what was his name? Vishwarup. He would associate with his devotees, and he eventually took sannyas. He took the renounced order, and he left home. And Lord Chaitanya's parents were very disturbed by this, because you have your firstborn male. It's a big thing, and he's leaves, gone from home, takes to the spiritual path. They're very sad. So Lord Chaitanya grew up, and he would often go to Advaita Acharyas also, and his parents would become disturbed. Oh no, he's going to become a sadhu too. He's going to leave home. And this was the effect that Advaita Acharya had on the environment. He had this dire desire, for others to be Krishna conscious. So much so that his strong desire brought the Lord down here, which is the same Lord that, like it or not, has given us everything that we have. Because, we hear about Krishna consciousness, but what would we know of Krishna if it wasn't for Lord Chaitanya? We sing, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachadine. I offer my obeisances to that person who's following the instructions of Saraswati, his guru, Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who's carrying out the instructions of Lord Chaitanya, Gauravani. So everything that we have of this modern age, of this chanting of Hare Krishna, this modern movement, is coming from Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, he instructed all of his associates, namely the 6 Goswamis, and they wrote books of literature breaking down this philosophy and science, and then that has been passed down and passed down and passed down all the way towards Srila Prabhupada. So Advaita Acharya is the reason, especially according to Lord Chaitanya, why he actually descended. So how important is Advaita Acharya for us? So we can pray to him, also to increase our devotion, to increase our realization of how important Lord Chaitanya is in our life. Another couple of things I'll say about Advaita Acharya real quick is Lord Chaitanya would always treat him like a senior, like, with awe and reverence, and he'd always treat him in this mood like, you brought me here because of your love and your devotion. And Advaita Acharya worshipped Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knew that he's Krishna. And he became frustrated because he's always praising me and glorifying me and worshiping me. And he didn't like that. He wanted to be treated like a subordinate to the Lord. So what did he do? He started preaching Mayavad philosophy, impersonal philosophy. He started having a little program and inviting people there and saying, worship the spirit within Krishna. Krishna is not God. You need to worship the impersonal force behind him. Lord Chaitanya, he found out about this and became so angry. He ran to Advaita Acharya's house. He knocked on the door. He grabbed him, he threw him out in the street, and he started jumping over and beating him. And then his Advaita Acharya's wife is like, no, you're going to kill him. He's an old man. And Advaita Acharya was just thinking, oh wow, the Lord is so mercifully just blessing me with a touch of his lotus hand. This is amazing. This is the most nectar. So in this way, these are pastimes of the Lord and his devotees, where Advaita Acharya was just trying to get some special mercy of the Lord. There's another time where Advaita Acharya, he couldn't understand a particular verse in the Bhagavad Gita, where I can't remember exactly where it's at, but to paraphrase, Krishna is saying that I forget the exact words, but there's a certain phrase that Krishna uses where it sounds kind of like impersonal in a way. And Advaita Acharya couldn't understand because he's like, oh, this sounds impersonal. This doesn't make sense. I don't know the Sanskrit, but the English, it's like, what is it like? It's kind of like, the verse in the Ishopanishad, like he runs, he doesn't run, he walks, he doesn't walk. It's something like that, where Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. So then, it's kind of like, what's he really mean here? And it's easy, some people, like especially impersonalists, take an impersonal conclusion of that and say, yeah, Krishna's really impersonal, he's saying it here. So Advaita Acharya, he couldn't understand this, and he decided to just fast until he died, or until the realization came. And then, Lord Chaitanya blessed him with this realization, and Lord Chaitanya actually revealed this. Lord Chaitanya would be doing Sankirtan, chanting with his devotees, and sometimes, Lord Chaitanya, he didn't openly reveal himself as Krishna, but amongst his very close, intimate associates, he would reveal his opulence as Krishna. So sometimes they'd start doing kirtan, and Lord Chaitanya would go into a transcendental state, and then he would just really don the whole persona of Krishna and like accepting worship from everybody and revealing so much about the personalities, like revealing that Murari Gupta is really Hanuman, from the past life. And in one of these states, he revealed that he protected Haridas Thakur from being whipped, and he showed his back, and he had all these whip marks on his back where he was standing there protecting Haridas Thakur. But the point that I'm bringing up is that he revealed that, he provided the knowledge to Advaita Acharya when he was fasting in this state because he couldn't tolerate to see his devotee undergo such austerities. So Krishna's Bhakta Vatsalya. He's always a well-wisher for his devotees. He's always looking to serve his devotees and give love and affection to his devotees. So as we practice devotional service, we may hit walls, or, like I said, we might fall into that net or below that net. To be honest, way below that net. Then we just keep trying, and we keep going, and we do something for Krishna, and Krishna sees our effort to please him, and Krishna will reciprocate. And this goes on and on and on until we give up the idea of, anything but Krishna brings suffering. Let me just do more for Krishna. So, one other thing that I was thinking about Advaita Acharya is very nice is that he's old. He was in the body of an old man. But he was like the most ecstatic dancer. When Lord Chaitanya was at the Ratha Yatra, he split the devotees into 7 parties. So, the Ratha Yatra is a big parade. They take Lord Jagannath, and they put him on a big cart, and they take him outside the temple, and it's like millions of people going down the street, and it's a big festival. They don't have microphones and speakers like we do today, so they split into different parties to have small chanting groups. And Lord Chaitanya made 7 parties, and in one of those parties, Advaita Acharya was the chief dancer. So I always thought that was really nice because he's like one of the oldest people there, but he's the lead dancer. His job is just to keep everybody fired up and keep dancing, ecstatically. So when one is empowered by the Shakti, the energy of Bhakti Yoga, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the bodily limitations become very small. They become very insignificant. And, I'm reminded of, there's the pastime of Jagannath Das Babaji. You could see here he's sitting on the stone chanting japa. He was very old. He was like 120, 125 years old, and he couldn't even hardly walk. His servant would carry him around in a basket, and he's just sitting there in the basket like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was on a mission to find the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, and he thought he found it. There was an argument between different parties there in Navadvip, in Mayapur, and he wanted to bring Jagannath Das Babaji there to confirm it, and he brought Jagannath Das Babaji, and when he got there, he sprang out of this basket, he started dancing and chanting, Haribol, Haribol! So, he's 125, he can't even walk, but by feeling the divine presence of the Lord, feeling that Shakti, he didn't even think about it. And this we can experience every day. You come to the kirtan, you can be all mental, and you're just sitting there like, okay, let me like shuffle my feet, let me do this, let me try to chant. Or if you really just, Hare Krishna, like really get into it, naturally you want to move, you want to dance, you want to like, you feel enlivened. So we can also pray to Advaita Acharya to always feel enlivened in devotional service. We don't have to become, the lead dancer, but at least we could pray to him for his mercy so that we can be enthusiastic and be enlivened. There's a lot more one could say about Advaita Acharya. There's more pastimes. There's more tattva, like a philosophical understanding of who he is and why he comes. But that's just a few things, and I don't want to keep everybody here forever. But thank you. Maybe if there's any other final concluding comments or thoughts or questions. If not, then we can end. Yes, you have the microphone.
Where is the shalagram that he was worshipping?
I have no idea. I mean, I have no idea. That'd be nice. There are different, I don't know the proper word, like deities and shalagrams and stones and shilas and paraphernalia worshipped by the Lord and his associates that are still here that one could see. I mean, it depends how much faith you have. I mean, I'm kind of skeptical. Sometimes you go to a temple and they say, oh, here's a stone where this happened, and it's kind of hard to say where, the deities are here. This is Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda right here in front of us. So it's not different from the Lord. So we can go hunting all these things, and it is really great. But at the same time, it's like the Lord is here. And I've been in Vrindavan, and they have one temple, at the Radha Damodar temple, they have a stone, which is a Govardhan Shila, which means it's a stone from Govardhan Hill, which, it's a whole other story, which I won't get into. Anyways, Sanatan Goswami, he was circumambulating Govardhan Hill every day, and eventually he got too old where he couldn't do it. It was too much for him. And Lord Chaitanya said, he gave him a Govardhan Shila, and he just said, circumambulate this 4 times, and that's like the same as going around Govardhan. So they actually have that Shila at this temple. There's another temple. They have a Govardhan Shila also that they say that Lord Chaitanya gave to, I believe, Raghunath Das Goswami, because that's what's said in the CC, that in the CC he gave him a Shila and he gave him a few other artifacts. But there's like this like round like soft groove, and they say, Lord Chaitanya would like rub the stone and chant, Hare Krishna, and from him like rubbing on it like so intensely, it made this whole like soft like polished like divot. Whether it actually is or not, I don't know. But there are plenty of deities that were worshipped by Lord Chaitanya's associates, and we can take darshan of these deities. Some are in Vrindavan, some are in Navadvip. This started a whole other like thought process of things, which is nice, but for everybody else who might not have been there, it might not be so significant. The last thing I'll say is like Lord Chaitanya, he went to Govardhan in Vrindavan, and it said that he went to the Haridwar temple. So this is a temple that's still there in Vrindavan, so you could see those deities that Lord Chaitanya was there in Vrindavan. And in the CC it says, Lord Chaitanya came there, he spent this many days, he was chanting with these devotees, in the temple for the deity. And you can actually go there and take darshan of that deity there. So where Advaita Acharya's Shalagam Shila is, I don't know, but there is still a connection to these personalities in some different ways. Indradyumna Swami is really good at finding these kind of nectars. So okay. Thank you everybody for patiently hearing. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gauranatar ki jai, Advaita Acharya ki jai. Vancha kapatarubhischa kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.